Courthouse National Historical Park in 2019. At William & Mary, she's a member of the Spotswood Society, Lemon Project Society, and she is the Oral History Committee Chair for the Toronto Walking Tour Project. Micah and I will be doing the third presentation. I'm a professor of English and Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies here at the college. Micah is a sophomore at William & Mary, soon to be a public policy and Africana studies major. We're working together on a digital edition of the 1872 Diary of Mary Virginia Montgomery, and we'll tell you more about that project during our presentation. So please join me in welcoming Martha Holler for her.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. As part of my English honors project, I have been researching 19th century utopian literature, specifically Frances Ellen Watkins Harper's novel, Iola Leroy. Iola Leroy is a novel centered on the desire for change in American society. Set during the Civil War, Iola Leroy uses the uncertainty of America's future to depict the necessary changes required to create a utopian society rooted in racial uplift. Harper positions African-American women at the forefront of this movement, and through her literature, emphasizes their key role in attaining her utopian vision. I think sharing her work can contribute to discussions of how we envision change during times of conflict, past and present, and how these moments of conflict activate our desire for something better. Harper's novel is continuously revisited by English scholars, largely because her writing broke the boundaries and rules of literature of her time and continue to remain relevant today. So, you might be wondering, like, what does she do in this novel to break all these rules? One of the main ways Harper achieves her utopian vision in her novel is through breaking the literary convention of what is known as the coupling convention. The coupling convention was a common literary plot device used to remedy the conflict in the novel with the marriage. So if you had two opposing viewpoints in the novel that are sort of warring with each other, the novel would end with a marriage from one character from one viewpoint, and one from another, essentially kind of put a pretty bow on everything without really getting into the nitty-gritty of it all. However, in Iola Leroy, Harper intentionally deviates from the coupling convention by setting up a pivotal scene that ends in a marriage refusal. So in Iola Leroy, this marriage refusal is backdropped against this is set in a Civil War camp, thus seizing the already uncertain future of America to insert women into the national dialogue. Placed amidst the injured, I'm so sorry. If there are people in the waiting room, would you like me to admit that?
No, we got it.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, it popped up and.
It lingers, but we got it.
Okay. So sorry. Okay. So placed amidst the injured and the dying, Iola Leroy, the marriage refusal on Iola Leroy becomes a battleground of itself of conflicting ideologies in which the desire for the expansion of women's influence and racial uplift triumph. This is largely due to Harper's strategic use of another literary convention of the 19th century, which is an archetype known as a passing character. Passing characters were largely used by white authors. These characters, although Black, could pass as white due to their mixed heritage. And traditionally in these white normative works, successfully passing is depicted as the best possible ending for these mixed race characters. Well, Harper took this character archetype and essentially turned it on its head and reappropriated it to both embrace Blackness over passing and to exert Black female autonomy through her main character, Iola's refusal of Dr. Gresham. Iola was a Civil War nurse. She was a formerly enslaved character. Her character was described as being able to pass as white, and Dr. Gresham was her boss, the doctor that she was a Civil War nurse for, and he fell in love with her and proposed to her. And for the context of what a marriage proposal can look like in these sort of works of literature. Scholar Elizabeth Young quote or states, "Marriage functions as a powerful symbol through which to explore questions of female subjectivity and racial identity." And that is exactly how Harper uses marriage in Iola Leroy. As Dr. Gresham, the white doctor from the north, proposes to Iola, he does so on the condition that her ancestry must never be revealed. This is where Harper deviates from how previous authors used passing character archetypes, because instead of accepting his proposal, Iola refuses. This is a major, major point in the novel, particularly considering that Iola's character was formerly enslaved, and she, as a Black woman, is able to exert her agency and her self-autonomy and her right to choose. On this major point, scholar Lucille reflects, and I have a lengthy quote, so bear with me. Harper's feminist utopia does not simply propose a more perfect or idealized version of traditional ideals of women's self-realization through marriage. Rather, Harper explicitly redefines and expands women's role in ways that re-articulate the representational politics of Blackness and result in a detailed project for the utopian restructuring of American society and the American South in particular. Harper's consistent focus on Iola's point of view and on her singular privilege to choose her racial affiliation enables the author to foreground explicitly both the distinctiveness of Black culture and the possibility of female heroism. This marriage refusal is really where the novel kicks off, and throughout the rest of it, to quote another scholar, Scholar Bobby, Iola travels beyond the privileges of whiteness, which she discovers to be based on dystopian inequality, into the realities of Blackness, whose resilience and humanistic values hold the promise of a better future. And I thought that was a really nice way to connect to the symposium's theme. And I think that's probably where I'm going to leave it for right now. And I hope that if you haven't already read some of Harper's work, that maybe this will get you excited to go out there and read some of them. She's an amazing poet. Highly recommend Iola Leroy. And yeah, thank you for listening to share my research.
Hi, so my research is part of my honors thesis, Diversity on Dog Street, and has a long semicolon title, as most research theses do. But the basics of it is I'm looking at how marginalized communities, focusing specifically on African American, queer, and Indigenous communities, are interpreted at Colonial Williamsburg and on William and Mary's historic campus. But today I'm going to be talking specifically about the African American community's interpretation and walking through a timeline of what goes on there and what that means to us today. So, why does this matter? Sure, Colonial Williamsburg is here and it's local to us. But what does that mean, like, to the broader museum field and to the broader community of people who just walk through Williamsburg every day? And Dog Street is just a good place to go on a run. So over the last few months, and I didn't mean for this project to be quite as timely as it is, DEI and diversity initiations have been receiving major funding cuts, and organizations are looking at taking away all their programs that are made to represent people. As the nation approaches its 250th anniversary next year, telling a whole and complete story of every American citizen is more important than ever. So, how has this been done in the past? Colonial Williamsburg started in the 1920s, almost 100 years ago. They're also celebrating their 100th birthday, actually next year as well. When Colonial Williamsburg was created, they bought up a lot of property around Williamsburg, and a lot of the property where Colonial Williamsburg is specifically belonged to the African American community. These properties were purchased, and most of them were purchased for below fair market value. One of these buildings includes First Baptist Church eventually, which I'm going to come back to at the end of this talk and talk about more why that lot specifically matters. But so up until 1979, Colonial Williamsburg says that they weren't interpreting African American history. They celebrate the 40th birthday of that in 2019. But the African American community has always been at Colonial Williamsburg, working there and being interpreted. African American people, especially African American men, were working as coach drivers and working in other service positions. But the first date that we see a major involvement of the African American community and a drive from Colonial Williamsburg specifically to focus on interpreting their history is in 1957, when Thaddeus Tate publishes The Negro in the 18th Century, Williamsburg. This is the first research study that's done and published by Colonial Williamsburg that focuses on African American history and African American history specifically in Williamsburg. Some of the data from that study is still talked about today, such as the fact that 50%, a little over 50% of Colonial Williamsburg's population was Black. Notice I'm using the term marginalized and not minority. Although they were making up over 50% of the population, their history wasn't actively being interpreted and highlighted and pushed by the institution. Also around this time, in 1951, William and Mary admitted its first Black student, Leon Willis, who begins a long legacy of William and Mary's work to include the African American community. Then, in the summer of 1979, notice how there's a large jump between these dates. Colonial Williamsburg starts a summer initiative to interpret different historical figures in the streets of Williamsburg. And with this project, they go to one of the local colleges and try to recruit to have 2 African American men come and perform. They're working as actors, not as historical interpreters, although that's today what we start to see them as. In 1984, Rex Ellis becomes the director of Black programs at Colonial Williamsburg, which eventually develops into the African American Interpretation and Presentations Department. This department goes on for another 20 years before it comes to an end in the early 2000s, late 1990s. So having these people whose jobs are specifically dedicated to telling the story of the African American community is a major shift from when Colonial Williamsburg starts as an institution. These people are dedicating their entire jobs and advocating and creating these different programs, many of which still exist today. During this 20-year period, several major other events take place in Williamsburg, such as the reconstruction of the slave quarters at Cartersboro. This is the first location dedicated specifically to the interpretation of African American history. By having a place where people can physically go to, they're able to gather together and have a tangible connection to the landscape of Williamsburg. One second, let me fix this. Also in the 1990s, Colonial Williamsburg starts a program called Becoming Americans, our journey to be both free and equal. So if you're going to tell a story about being free and being equal, can you really exclude half of the population? No. This program also starts to highlight telling the stories of women, another half of the population, and telling the stories of the Native Americans who were part of Williamsburg. So in 1999, an entire year was dedicated to the theme enslaving Virginians and telling the story of the African American community in slavery. And then right around this time, the African American Interpretation and Presentations unit ends. And there's a lot of pushback from the former employees of the AAIP. And for the early years of 2000s, Carter's Grove plantation gets sold. So there is no space. There is no group of people who are there working specifically on this project. But do these people stop interpreting the history of African Americans? No, they absolutely don't. So over the next few years, we still see some small programs hosted by the African American community. There's still programs happening, but most of these are on smaller scales than they were formerly. Up until about the year 2020, which is during COVID, a weird time to be getting back into interpreting a community. But so in 2020, in 2021 and 2022, several things happened in Williamsburg. In 2020, the Bray School is found on William and Mary's campus using dendrochronology. And what do you do with that? This is a building dedicated specifically to the history and education of African American children. So Colonial Williamsburg and William and Mary worked together to create an effort to move the Bray School to where it's currently located over near the art museums of Colonial Williamsburg. And we're working on restoring the building, which hopefully is going to open this spring. Then in 2021, another project started at Colonial Williamsburg. Using ground penetrating radar, they found what the remains of First Baptist Church. You know, that thing that they tore down back towards the beginning of Colonial Williamsburg. So they realized that they are mistaken in the time period of the building. There was a large modern church that was there when they came in and bulldozed it over to build a parking lot. But they realized there was an original meeting structure there. And in the archaeology to reconstruct that building, they uncovered human remains. So Colonial Williamsburg reached out to the descendant community to figure out what to do with these bodies. They weren't going to dig these up if the descendant community didn't want them to. And this started to build a connection with that community, working together to create a place for everyone in Williamsburg. And that collaboration has led to several beautiful opening ceremonies, and hopefully they plan to, in the next couple of years, reconstruct the First Baptist Church meeting house. Back over at William and Mary, because we're here with the Lemon Project. The Lemon Project is William and Mary's first large-scale event to interpret the history of African American communities, specifically tied to William and Mary's campus. So in 2008, students and faculty and staff at William and Mary gathered together and asked the Board of Visitors if they would be willing to make a statement and start a project to research the university's connections to slavery. In 2009, they passed a resolution that started the Lemon Project. Now, the Lemon Project is a great thing, and I speak as a member of the Lemon Project Society. It's beautiful. But from the university itself, up until 2018, there was no apology for slavery. It took 9 years for that to happen. And then in 2022, on May 7th, Park Memorial to the Enslaved was dedicated, having a place to gather together as a community and honor the history and the legacies of those enslaved here at William and Mary. So that's a brief history, not so brief, it's a long chapter about the work of Colonial Williamsburg and William and Mary to interpret these communities. But so what do we learn from it today? The importance of community. Having people gather together and celebrate these different people is so important, especially now. We also learned the importance of having a place. It doesn't have to be a physical place, but a physical place is nice. Having a place like Park where you can gather together and celebrate these people in a physical, tangible way. A place on the landscape that you can point to and go, here are the names of the people that were here. Here's what they did. Without it being overshadowed by the history of the important white men who were at the school. What else do we learn? That these communities have always been here and have always been represented and have always had stories to be told. And that's not going to change no matter what administration or what faculty is working. As long as somebody cares about these individual people, this work is still going to be done. And this doesn't just apply to the African-American community. This applies to the other communities I'm researching, like the queer and indigenous community. It applies to women, it applies to disabilities. So as we approach 2026 and the anniversary of this country, it's important now more than ever to be telling the stories of every American citizen. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it.
I don't know what I did. I was so confident in myself. I didn't share.
Yeah, we have to share with our Zoom audience.
Sorry, Zoom audience. Thank you, everyone. Micah and I are going to be talking again about the 1872 diary of Mary Virginia Montgomery. And we've been working on her diary as part of a larger project called the Black Women's Diary Project. And the Mary Virginia Montgomery diary is the first diary that will appear in this project when we launch it, and probably in the spring of 2026. The Black Women's Diary Project is a digital humanities project that will eventually include fully transcribed, annotated, and searchable editions of the diaries of approximately 8 to 10 19th century African-American women. And here we have sort of a representation of how we're working with the manuscript pages of the Montgomery Diary, which the diary is located at the Library of Congress. And then we're working to encode the diary using the textual encoding initiative guidelines for encoding documents. And don't worry, I won't say too much about that today. So that's sort of what our thinking is, that we're creating transcriptions, we're doing annotations for each of these diaries, and we're creating searchable content across diaries, right? So you can find things within one diary, but you can also look across diaries. While several Black women's diaries are available in print, they're often difficult to gain access to. Moreover, even when illegible words and unreadable names are noted, printed diary editions fix the editor's transcription and don't allow for corrections. In digital editions, images of diary pages alongside transcriptions allow users to engage with the project, offering suggestions for resolving illegibles and fleshing out annotations, so you can be in constant contact with the folks who are using your site. Digital editions have the potential to offer the best and most complete rendering of a diary's text if the site is maintained and updated over a long period of time. The BWDP will also put a number of diary texts in conversation, allowing users to search across the site. For example, a user eager to find out more about 19th century African-American women in music could use the search tool for particular instruments such as piano or guitar, or particular events such as concert or lessons, or just music in general. Hits would include entries from the diaries of Civil War Philadelphian Emily Davis, who took guitar lessons in the middle of the Civil War. Post-war elocutionist Hallie Quinn Brown, who toured the US with the Jubilee Troupe from Wilberforce University. Or the subject of our talk today, Mary Virginia Montgomery, whose diligent practice on the piano formed part of her rigorous plan of study as she prepared to enter Oberlin College in the fall of 1872. Montgomery's diary will be the first to appear on the Black Women's Diary Project site, hopefully in the spring of 2026. This diary has been used by several historians and appeared excerpted in 1984, but the digital edition will be the first fully transcribed, encoded, and searchable edition of the diary available to scholars and the general public. In our presentation today, we'll read the diary as a record of Mary Virginia's extensive studies in composition, geography, and the sciences, as well as material evidence of her ambitious commitment to education for its own sake, a firm rejection of the white race's perceptions of African Americans as incapable and uninterested in learning. We will conclude by reflecting on the digitization of the diary as an intellectual and educational opportunity for students at William and Mary.
Okay, so I feel like it would be really good if like we start with some diary history of like why like Mary Virginia Montgomery is writing, when she's writing. So like Montgomery, she begins her diary on like January 1st, 1872, when she was 21 years old. And she was the daughter of Benjamin and Mary Montgomery. And Mary Virginia and her family were enslaved by Joseph Davis, which we're going to talk about later in this presentation about like Joseph Davis's kind of complicated relationship with race and with racism and with enslaved people and free people. And so the eldest brother of, so Joseph Davis was the eldest brother of Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederate States, as we know. Which is why this history is like so complicated and interesting, like how Mary Virginia's family ended up in like this free situation, right? So Joseph Davis had very interesting ideas about like freedom and about, I guess, what Black people's place in society should be. And he was inspired by this Enlightenment speaker called Robert Owen. And so with his ideas, he basically wanted to create this community of like cooperation. And he had a plantation called Davis Bend. And he enslaved nearly like 250 people there. But while he was enslaving these people, he like provided them with like adequate food and shelter and water and everything so that they would be like satisfied with, I guess, their experience of being enslaved and owned by somebody. And he thought that this was progressive. He thought that these ideas about freedom were good. And he felt good about himself that he, provided African Americans like this kind of white savior complex, provided them with like shelter and food, which normal humans need. So basically, we're going to go into like this savior complex of Joseph Davis. But he did provide like opportunities for enslaved people at Davis Bend to like pursue education. And Mary Virginia was one of the products of that education. But I think this was like kind of a byproduct of his overall like, savior complex of him feeling good about helping African American people. But at the same time, like he did give them opportunities to pursue education and self-advancement. So this would look like, producing chicken and eggs or managing gardens or passing steamboats, activities like those. But I feel like I said before, like these are byproducts of like his exploitation of Black people and ownership over them. And there's this historian called Janet Sharp Herman, and she points out that the most benign form of slavery could never be utopian. And in the absence of freedom, like Benjamin Montgomery, who's Mary Virginia Montgomery's father, took full advantage of, Joseph Davis's kind of underestimation of Black people. And well, first of all, he was an amazing Black man. He did a lot of things with his freedom that I don't think Joseph Davis would have expected him to do with his education or expected him to do with how intelligent of a Black man that he was. And so Joseph Davis like underestimated the unforeseen staggering potential of an enslaved Black man, like with an education. And so this is Davis Bend. I thought it would be interesting for you all to like see a map of Davis Bend and what it looked like. So you'll see like Hurricane, Briarfield, and Arsenio, which are some of the sections of the plantations that we'll be talking about today. But basically, at the beginning of the Civil War in 1861, Benjamin Montgomery was managing Joseph Davis's plantations. Hurricane and Briarfield specifically, and those belong to Joseph and Jefferson Davis. So, and along with operating these properties and these plantations, Benjamin Montgomery also owned and operated a store at Hurricane, which he retained profits from, and he was allowed to manage the time and labor of his own family there. And so following the Civil War, when Jefferson Davis's imprisonment and Joseph Davis's advanced age, because the Civil War, it was impossible for them to return to Davis Bend. So Benjamin Montgomery, and this is the part that blows my mind, Benjamin Montgomery purchased the properties of Davis Bend. And he, in the diary that Mary Virginia is writing, opens with that family living in Davis Bend with her parents and also her sister Rebecca in the former home of Jefferson Davis. And I just want to put emphasis on that because of how powerful and empowering that reality is, that these enslaved people who were previously enslaved under somebody, owned under somebody as property and not seen as humans, are now living in the same house that Jefferson Davis and his family once lived in. So that in itself is amazing. And I think that shows like what the Levin Project is all about, Black resilience and resistance. So basically, like, in addition, like the rest of the Montgomery family, like her brother Isaiah, which she calls Z in her diary, Z-I-E, lived nearby with his wife, Martha Robb Montgomery, and her other brother, William Thornton Montgomery, also lived nearby. So back to the complicated relationship that Joseph Davis had with race. So Mary Virginia was like, she was educated with her brother Isaiah, and basically they described it as like receiving, well, this is Isaiah speaking. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, these are like Hurricane and Briarfield. We have some, yeah, literally, we have so many slides. But yeah, this is Hurricane and Briarfield. So one of them belongs to Joseph Davis and one of them belongs to Jefferson Davis. And this house, this is Briarfield?
Yeah, this is the house they lived in.
Right, this is the house they lived in, which Jefferson Davis previously lived in. So I feel like that was pretty cool. But back to Mary Virginia's like education. So basically, like Isaiah described their education as receiving my first instruction from a Webster blueback speller on Sabbath mornings at the hands of a slave of Jefferson Davis named George Stewart. Father taught me the art of writing and gave me lessons at night to be recited on the following night. So from these quotes, we can understand that like Benjamin Montgomery, he took education very seriously for himself and for his children. He wanted his children to be successful and he wanted them to be educated. And so Benjamin Montgomery like later hired a white man to tutor Isaiah and Mary Virginia. And, you know, Joseph Davis, his complicated relationship with race, he was so impressed by this, impressed that Black people even had the capacity to understand education and the capacity to be intelligent. And he moved the teacher that Benjamin Montgomery had hired closer to the Hurricane Plantation. And then he enrolled like white students at that same school where Isaiah and Mary Virginia Montgomery were receiving education. And so then eventually, like nearby plantation owners, they were like overlooking this situation and they were saying that this was wrong. Like Black and white students should not be educated in the same facilities. They didn't understand why Black students were even being educated in the first place. They were just confused. And so eventually, like they demanded that the school was to be closed. So Mary Virginia and her brother had to find a different means of education. And of course, like it was illegal to teach an enslaved person to read at this time. And the Davises only did what would benefit them, and education was only like a byproduct of that. So this was never about Black education. This was about money, and this was about ownership and exploitation. And so from Joseph Davis's point of view, Mary Virginia's education was likely a byproduct of the need for her brothers to learn how to serve the Davis family as accountants and crop managers. But for Benjamin Montgomery, however, Mary's Virginia education was worthy of investment. So her later diary like shows how educated this young woman was, and not only in like standard education, like like sewing and things that like young women would have known at this time, but also interesting things like phrenology. Like, have you guys ever heard of phrenology? The study of it's like a study of like the brain. Like, how would you explain phrenology?
It was a pseudoscience. There was sort of a belief that you could read someone's skull and figure out, and it was in lots of ways a racist science, but she used it for her own purposes in really interesting ways.
Right.
We could do a whole other presentation about that.
Literally, she had so many different hobbies, and she was such like a young, funky woman who was interested, like had niche hobbies like phrenology that she read about and wrote about in composition. And Benjamin Montgomery like encouraged her to be this way. He gave her books and papers to do, and they discussed literature like at dinner, like as a normal family would. And I guess this was like very advanced for the time, but in my opinion, like Black people were always capable of this type of intellect and this type of education, which Joseph Davis obviously didn't foresee, right? So in terms of like Mary Virginia's like her jobs and her further education past this, which is like another amazing part of this presentation. So basically, Mary Virginia was approximately like 11 years old when the Civil War began, and her family moved to Cincinnati for refuge from like military engagements along the Mississippi River. And so it's not clear if she was like enrolled in formal education at that time, but like we know that Benjamin Montgomery cared about her education. So she was probably having some type of informal education or teaching, tutoring of some sort. But she seems to have been employed by this lady called Miss Richardson, who's the wife of the captain of the steamship who brought the Montgomerys to Cincinnati. But she may have also attended like one of Cincinnati's colored schools because, you know, at that time it was obviously segregated, like during and after the Civil War. But the schools probably would have offered like a classical education for Black students that were like white schools of the time. So Mary Virginia eventually returned to Davis Bend with her family. After the Civil War, she was too old and too advanced, probably because she was so smart, and in her diary you can see that, that she like wouldn't benefit from the universal education that was offered near Davis Bend. So like, especially during the Mississippi Reconstruction era. So like in 1872, which is when her diary begins, Mary Virginia is participating in like her family economy. Like she's working as an accountant in the family store at the Hurricane Plantation. And she's like, managing things like the mail and the family's cotton sales, like as a postmaster for Davis Bend. And even though her brother, he's like the official title, like postmaster of Hurricane, like she's behind the scenes doing all the work, which is typically what women of the time would have been doing. Like they're really doing all the work. Like the first lady does all the work, but the president is the head, you know, the president's the head. So, she's friendly. So she has these two friends. One is Virginia Green and one is Amelia Shadd, but both were Black women teachers on Davis Bend, which Mary Virginia will eventually become. And she prepares herself kind of like independently with like a rigorous program of study that she just like decides, like she writes composition, and then eventually in the diary she mentions that she received a letter from Oberlin College, which is a college in Ohio. And so we understand, like we come to understand from reading that she must have been preparing for like her college education, which is really progressive for this time as well. A Black woman who was college educated in 1872, like that's quite unheard of. So right. And back to Mary Virginia's accomplishments. So she would have experienced kind of like the same standard prejudices that a lot of Black people would have experienced in education at this time. And, you know, a lot of people didn't believe that Black people had the capacity for independence, political thought, or intellectual engagement. Like that was just, you know, they didn't think Black people had that vote in their body, I guess. And so many white Southerners believed that education for African Americans was like labor lost. Like they thought it was like kind of losing revenue from their businesses of plantations of exploiting people. And so they wouldn't allow, that's part of the reason why they wouldn't allow Black people to be educated in the first place. But at the same time, like this was a dream of social and racial equality, like that people would eventually have to accept in post-war economy, that Black people were going to be advancing in society. And so Mary Virginia, like with her composition and her studies, she kind of demanded that. Like she said, I'm advancing and I'm evolving, and you guys are going to have to accept that from me. And so basically at Davis Bend, after she went to college, Black teachers taught Black children, and she eventually became like, after succeeding her own education, she became a teacher at one of the schools like near Davis Bend. So yeah. And so now I want you to look at this slide. Like these are an example of like some of Mary Virginia's independent studies, like of what she would have been interested in. So you see phrenology. Wait.
It's underneath us. Yeah. Wait,
Oh, it's
yeah, I can't
underneath.
really.
Oh, I want you to see that. But like this phrenology, it just shows a picture of, like the brain, like the different sections of the brain, like what we were talking about earlier. And then this is like a picture of a bass because she like sewed. And this is a picture of a science experiment. Like in her diary, she talks about like a crystallization experiment, which I don't really know too much about that, but obviously she did. So she was interested in things like that. And like she did a lot of formal writing, like formal essays when she went to Oberlin, like she studied in French Hall. And she generally writes about like benign subjects like, oh, thank you. You can see phrenology. So,
Okay.
yeah, more independent studies. So she reads a lot of books. She reads Darwin's On the Origins of the Species, which was published in spring of 1872. She shares her knowledge of agriculture and she oversees work in the garden. Like she does rhetorical exercises at Oberlin College. She gives essay speeches. Like she's very, like I would say that she's privileged, but she's also very educated. So yeah, in terms of her independent studies, like those were her like pastimes that she really like, those were her hobbies, things that she really enjoyed doing. And so now I want to talk more about Oberlin College, because I feel like this is like, a fascinating part of Mary Virginia. And here you can actually see like, is this a yearbook? This is like a book that
Yeah,
really
it's like
set
a
all
catalog
the,
of students.
right. So like, this is Mary Montgomery's name. And it says Hurricane, Mississippi, where she lived. So this is like proof that she actually attended Oberlin College. Like this wasn't just talking in her diary, like she was presently there at Oberlin, and her sister Rebecca also studied there. So, and she talks about things like in October 1872, she talks about on October 2nd, she's like, Beck and I, who's her sister Rebecca, reviewed some portions of physical geography. Or on the 4th, they have a little exercise in geography and history. And on the 7th, B and I had a geographical rehearsal. So she's like actively participating in Oberlin, like she's a student there. And so she takes classes like Latin, she takes rhetoric, she takes arithmetic, she like takes classes in the Bible. And she occasionally attends like her sister's geography classes, which she finds interesting because she always talks about like Beck and I did this, blah, blah, blah. And the student body at Oberlin College in 1872 was approximately around like 8%. And so kind of similar to William and Mary, to be honest, 8%. Yeah. So, which meant that she did have other Black classmates, but she just like didn't really write about them in her diary. Like we don't know like what her relationship with other Black students would have looked like. But I guess we can imagine that like she would have related with them in the sense that they were in this predominantly white community where they felt alone and that they needed a sense of like friendship and familiarity with other Black people. But she probably still felt out of place, like regardless if there were Black students or not. I'm sure she felt out of place in Ohio. Like she's from Mississippi, so she's a student adjusting to like I don't know, formal education. So yeah.
So as you can see, Mary Virginia Montgomery's diary can tell students and scholars about many aspects of African-American women's lives in the post-Civil War period. But education is at the heart of her everyday life. I would say it's the single most important thing that she writes about in her diary. When she returned from Oberlin College, Mary Virginia and her sister Rebecca became teachers. They attended Oberlin for 2 years, providing a consistent education for the children of Davis Bend for more than a decade. And when, after their father's death, Isaiah or Z Montgomery founded a new town north of Davis Bend, he turned the education of Mound Bayou's children over to Mary Virginia. In the spirit of Mary Virginia Montgomery, the Black Women's Diary Project offers opportunities for William and Mary students to engage in the work of digital humanities. The early stages of this project, including the initial transcription of the Montgomery Diary, took place in a course on Black women's diaries taught by me and offered by the English department and the Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies program several years ago. Micah has been the sole paid employee of the project, and really more than that, since the spring of 2024. Since then, she has read about and researched the Montgomery family, visited the Library of Congress with me to study the manuscript diary, and helped encode the diary to prepare it for publication on the website next spring. This semester, students in a 1-credit class have transcribed yet another diary by a Norfolk resident named Florence Barber, and will conclude the course by learning to use the software tool called Oxygen that will enable them to encode that diary. The opportunities for faculty and student research offered by these diaries are endless, and we pursue them inspired by Mary Virginia Montgomery's thirst for knowledge. Thank you. So we have time for questions.
I got a comment. You know why I kept watching you? Because every movement you have is my granddaughter, Aaliyah. Everything about you, when you kept your eyes, you express your eyes, you're all caught up in excitement. I don't have to go visit Aaliyah. I just saw her today. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna be the runner. Thank you.
I'm speaking to the second. What is your name? Abigail, thank you.
So Abigail, your timeline and your comments on, Williamsburg were absolutely excellent. I need to make a comment because I have forgotten all about it. You had talked about the reenactors, that Williamsburg brought about. And one of them was Matthew Ashby, my ancestor. And so I had forgotten because I worked at GE Capital Mortgage in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And people called me from Connecticut, which is where GE's headquarters is. And they said, Teddy Ashby, have you seen this commercial? Your cousin's on it about Virginia. I said, I have a cousin in a commercial on Virginia. They said, yeah, Matthew Ashby. He's a blacksmith. And he's a tourist, it was a tourist thing. It hadn't been shown in Philadelphia. So I got calls from all different places from that commercial. And we came down here, came down to Williamsburg for the reunion, our family reunion. And of course, we went to the slave quarters. And for Williamsburg, for the banquet that night, our dinner banquet on Saturday night, Williamsburg had arranged for Matthew Ashby, unbeknownst to us, to come to the reunion, the reenactor. He was a big, tall, and we were sitting in the place where we had this banquet meeting, and all the lights went off, and the doors open, and they had it so that the shadow looked like man was 10 feet tall. Oh, that's great! Oh, Matthew Ashby. I mean, it was just like amazing. I had completely forgotten that. But anyway, another one was that I got calls from people who saw the ad and they just immediately said, hey, I saw your cousin on the TV. Yeah. So anyway, the other history was really very important. I took notes. Thank you for that.
Thank you all so much for this. It's been wonderful. Micah, I wanted to ask if you could specify a little bit the age of Mary Virginia when she was first being educated at Davis Bend by Mr. Davis. And was her father Benjamin in his younger years, was he also educated by Davis? I'm asking because, if he was motivated to provide that education, thinking that it would make these enslaved individuals better workers in the future, how old was Mary Virginia when that was happening? Was he thinking in the long term of in 15 years from now, when she's an adult, she'll be a great producer for me, that kind of situation?
So I feel like, okay, so Mary Virginia, she writes her down when she's 21, right? But I feel like, I don't really know when her education would have started, probably when she was pretty young. Cause I think besides the formal education that she received, with Davis and with teachers like that, I feel like Benjamin Montgomery, which is her father, by the way, would have encouraged her to be educated at a young age. He would have introduced her to reading and writing as a young student. I think he would have found that important, right? And I think that when she went to Oberlin, I think that's when all of it came to fruition. That's when, that's not when her passion for education started. I feel like her passion for education has been throughout her life, throughout her young years.
And do you think that Benjamin was educated by the Davises there?
So Benjamin was purchased, he came from Loudoun County in Virginia. And he was purchased I believe in New Orleans, and then was taken by steamboat up to Davis Bend. He ran away almost immediately, and was captured and brought back. And the only account of this that we have is from Isaiah Montgomery, and the Montgomerys have a, really conflicted relationship with the Davises. But really, because they stay in Mississippi, they really still need their support, and they also need to not piss off the white people in Mississippi. So Isaiah Montgomery kind of presents it as he was returned to the plantation, and Joseph Davis said, so what do you want in order to be here? You know what I mean? I don't know if that's actually the conversation that took place, but Benjamin Montgomery wanted to know how to read. He wanted to make his own money. And he was just incredibly gifted. Some people call him a genius. He was an inventor. He was an incredible business manager.
And so he was, I don't know if Joseph Davis taught him to read specifically, but he was allowed to learn to read. He had access to books and things like that. I mean, I think Davis just recognized the potential in him. But I think part of what he was given as part of this exchange was the ability to manage his own family's time, which meant Mary Virginia was not out in the cotton fields. You know, she was at home, his wife was at home. I mean, it's interesting, his wife was at home until they own the land, and then she's out there doing all this work, you know, because she's contributing to the family economy. But, you know, when they're enslaved, she's able to stay home and take care of her children, so.
Thanks, everyone, for your presentation. They were really interesting. My question's for Abigail. And I was wondering about Colonial Williamsburg's sale of an enslaved person. And to what degree, I'm really interested, as a background, when I was a William and Mary student, I interned in African American research and interpretation. And my first day, they sat me down and showed me that video. And I was wondering sort of how that moment in the history of interpretation at Colonial Williamsburg sort of influenced its later interpretation, and also its the reaction, right? Obviously there was backlash and sort of the community concerns around it.
I have literally 5 pages written on this, and somebody else wrote an entire thesis, like dissertation on this. So that's why I didn't bring it up, because I knew I only had 15 minutes to talk. But so in 1994, Colonial Williamsburg did a program called To the Highest Bidder, which was an estate sale where, well, it's known as a slave auction. That's what everybody calls it nowadays. But it was an estate sale that also involved the selling off of enslaved people. This was not well, it's very complicated. So beforehand, the news got word that Colonial Williamsburg was going to be selling people, and news stories about this got circulated around saying that they were selling them to visitors and not like that this was a performance. And it had really negative press because Colonial Williamsburg wasn't doing an outreach about this program very well. They weren't connecting with the media, and it wasn't advertised as well as it should have been. To the point where the Virginia chapter of the NAACP were like came and protested and were like, this is bad. And so when this auction happened, there were protests going on with it. I mean, there were visitors who were there to see it. And like afterwards, Chrissy Coleman, who is in charge of the African American interpretation and presentations programming at the time, she like met with people afterwards and talked about it and like talked about the historical context of it. So afterwards, the NAACP, one of them actually like rescinded her comment about the programming and was like, this was actually really well done. Part of the concern about it was also that Colonial Williamsburg had a really bad history of interpreting the African American community. So there was no good faith that came with this programming. It was truly a fear that they were going to butcher this history. They were going to just relive a trauma just to make money. So after this program, you start to see Colonial Williamsburg doing a lot more advertising for African American programming. When events like this, well, we never do another event like this because of the negative press it receives. But when we're doing events, we're advertising them more, we're doing more outreach, we're trying to like let people know the fact that we're doing this history and that we're trying to do it well. Now, there's still like debates over whether Colonial Williamsburg interpreting this history is just bringing up this trauma. And those debates go on to this day. But in my personal opinion, I think telling the history of these people is extremely important, and it's not all going to be happy aspects because it wasn't a happy history. I hope that answered your question.
Can I add to that? Because I was there. And actually, the gentleman that played, the gentleman that was auctioned off on the front porch with his tool, he's probably still down the hall. He was here today participating in, or participating as an audience member for this conference. It was a packed town that day, and there was feedback. There was pushback from community. The NAACP was there. They were very angry. In fact, Christie came out to explain to them and asked them to give them a chance to show them what they were going to do, to trust them that what they were going to present was with respect and honor for those people that they were representing. It was not going to be a step and fetch show. And so she was trying to say, give us as part of your community, who also works here at Colonial Williamsburg, the opportunity to show you the value that we place on our own story. So those people actually put themselves on the line, but they did get a lot of support from one of the vice presidents there. Christy Comer received death threats behind the program. And the news went all around the country. I had my young son with me, and I sent him home because the town was so packed with people. And I didn't know what might happen or what might not happen, because you had different reactions from everybody. And it did change the course of things. Because from that point till now, there has been a back and a forth. Sometimes I would say waffling, because people are afraid of truth. Truth brings out a lot of different feelings. Truth is freeing if you have the strength to walk to it and through it. But a lot of times people just want to go far enough to say, well, we've done the best we can, but back away when the fire really starts to roar. And so we're still working with that today. And there is still difficulty in the relationship with the African American community in Colonial Williamsburg, but we're working on it. And so, and it's probably always going to be an issue or something we have to work with, because just like our political environment is today, things tend to go around and come back again. So some of those same ideals and practices and policies are still in place. And so I can tell you, as a costume performer working at Colonial Williamsburg, there has never been a day that somebody did remind me or take me back to some of those same moments. So it hasn't gone away, but things get better with each step that we take.
I have a question for Martha Holler. When was the book written? Iola, what's the last name?
I think a little bit specific year, it's written after the Civil War.
And is it available?
Oh, do you want to read it? Yeah, you should be able to get it in most libraries or from somewhere online, like Barnes and Noble. I'm sure we'll have it. It's not super popular in the sense that most people won't encounter it just through like traditional middle school or high school curriculum, but it is still out there. It's popular in the sense that you can still get it for sure. I'm excited that you want to read it. I hope you like it. Questions? Oh.
Oh, question. So like this whole conversation has just kind of had me thinking like, how do you even go about like repairing a relationship between like the African American Williamsburg community and Colonial Williamsburg? Like, where do you start at? Because first of all, like me personally, I feel like when something traumatic happens to me and something is like weighing in on my heart and my spirit and then my ancestors, I'd like an apology. But I know that a lot of people in the Black community say like apology isn't enough. Like I want action and apology. But I do think apology is like a good place to start. And I'm not sure if like, don't quote me, but I'm not sure if William and Mary has apologized. I think we have just moved forward with program. And I think part of the reason is just because it is an uncomfortable conversation, but like uncomfortable conversations are needed to make change. Like how can you make forward change without having conversations that are very uncomfortable for other people in the room? Because at the same time, it's like if we don't have these conversations, I'm uncomfortable every day. Uncomfortable every day. As an African-American student at a predominantly white institution that has a history of slavery, I'm uncomfortable when I go into class. I feel alone in class sometimes. So, and I think that kind of trauma that you kind of experience, that Black people have to experience throughout their life as nature of being African-American, like, I think we need to start somewhere with like an apology or a recognition that is not tied to program.
Yeah, so I can't speak as a member of the African American community. And the fact that you don't know, I'm so sorry for kicking you. The fact that you don't know about the work that Williamsburg or Colonial Williamsburg is doing is part of the problem. So in 2018, the board, which only 7 years ago, the Board of Visitors released a statement apologizing for the university's association and involvement, and the university itself owning slaves, the university's involvement in Jim Crow, the university's perpetuation of everything that comes from the institution of slavery. So they released a statement addressing this. And it's supposed to be read at the start of university events. Is it always? No. Yeah, I've heard it at a few events, but like not many. It's yeah. Yeah, I read it for this at the start of this. It is separate from the land acknowledgement. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's a statement on slavery and its legacies. Yeah, and it's in a lot of class syllabuses, but it's usually glossed over in the same way, often with the land acknowledgement, that it's in this document and you're not gonna look at it. So so I think a lot of it's highlighting that stuff, and you talk about the uncomfortable conversations, and those are so important, and that's what's had to happen over the last, well, most of this work's been done over the last 5 years, I'm gonna be completely honest. With Colonial Williamsburg and William and Mary, the work of Park, the publicity that's associated with it is the last 5 years. The work with the Bray School and the First Baptist Church Descendant Community Projects. A lot of that work is done specifically because the people working at the archaeology lab want to come into, like, specifically we're wanted to reach out with the descendant community and meet with them, and they have been meeting and sitting in rooms and having those uncomfortable conversations. But the fact that that's not something people know about, how do you know? I know because I've been in Williamsburg for 4 years and heavily associated, well, I'm a history major. I do public history. I worked at the archaeology lab for a year.
So were you there when they had to?
I actually have not been.
But I have.
You have?
So I'm an anthropology grad student. My advisor is the spiritual successor to Michael Blakey, who created the ethical clientage model, which outlines how to engage with dissident communities, the people who are giving you funding, and the research that you're doing in order to consider everybody involved. This was all started when he worked on the New York African Burial Ground project in New York. So these conversations are happening and continue to happen. My first year here, I was sat with the dissident community, and they were like, listen, they lead everything. If they don't want to do research, we don't do research. You are a tool for them to use. And if they don't want to use you, that's not anything that you can dispute. But the fact that other people don't know about this change is indicative of the lack of communication, the dissemination of this information, and our own community not having a cohesive idea as to what they would like as their version of an apology or acknowledgement. And that's why dissident engagement is so sticky. It's because you'll have half the people who are like, love it, keep doing research. Another half are like, why are you touching the bodies? So not everyone agrees on how to heal from something like this. And these conversations are happening. It's just sometimes we're not the ones hearing them.
Well, let me shut it. As the first African community engagement manager for Colonial Williamsburg, as a lifetime resident for Colonial in Williamsburg, okay, which is separate I lived in Williamsburg. I work at Colonial Williamsburg. There's a difference. It's a town surrounded by town, okay? And the African American community borders Colonial Williamsburg. Williamsburg was a black town with white folks in it. It had its own, what do you call it? Not Black Mecca, but Black Wall Street. The historic block that was nothing but black businesses. If Williamsburg actually is a cemetery, wherever you put your shovel, you probably go find a body. If I'm just saying that's the way it is. So I halfway speak for Colonial Williamsburg because I worked there. Was a member of the community first. Okay. And so there is no healing without addressing. And a lot of times that's the problem, getting people to address it and sit and just listen, not respond, but listen to the people who have been traumatized and damaged, because that history plays over and over and over in their minds from generation to generation. And these are not just people that heard about it or had it happen to a family member. Generations of their families have worked at Colonial Williamsburg, okay? From the opening of their doors to present day. I have a sister who is 91 years old, still living, that worked at Colonial Williamsburg for years. And one that died 3 years ago that was 88. So the Williamsburg that she experienced was different than the one who was 91. My grandfather worked in 1943. I have brothers who worked there all up until my birth and beyond. And nieces, nephews, cousins, because that's where people had to work. And it's not that they embraced the place, some did, but most times it's where you had to work. And you had families and responsibilities, so you had to kind of put stuff behind them and going into the business of living. They had children to raise, okay? But the stuff, the ugliness, the pain has still not been dealt with. But it's not that people won't talk about it. It takes Colonial Williamsburg coming to the table and sitting there and listening to it. Cliff Fleet, I believe, has a heart for the story and the ear for the truth. He's just one person because he works for someone too. We have a board. He has someone over him. You have donors. So it's a whole messy situation. But until we're able to sit in a room like this and listen to each other, and yes, it's going to be painful because we're all human. The oppressors know, and I'm not calling the oppressor, however, maybe I am. The oppressor is no less human than the oppressed, and nothing human is foreign to either one of us. So it's when you're uncomfortable, it's because your humanity is connecting. Because how can another human being do to another human being whatever we've just talked about? You understand what I'm saying? So it's going to take that, and I don't know that it's ever going to happen like that, because the same way you have some people who want to talk about it, even in the community, there are others who won't allow the talking to happen because the community itself is divided. You know, so it's a very complex thing. It can be done, but not without an emotional cost. But it's already costing us emotion. Even the folks that work there on the education side, which is where I am, it's only a handful. And those are not people who are working there for the money, because there isn't enough money to experience what they experience every day. It really is a calling for you to be there that keeps you there, taking the insults and the aggravation. And when people demean you and put you down and question your right to even exist and try to make you feel as though you should be satisfied. Things are better now. They will tell you about a situation they never had to live, but we're all impacted by it. So to kind of answer your question, until we're willing to sit and address it and be uncomfortable, because what we're looking for is on the other side of that is comfort. It's never going to happen. But we're at least trying to. You're doing it. We're all trying to do it.
I just wanted to clarify that it's difficult for our interpreters to work in the environment, not because of CW, but because of the visitors, because of society. And I've heard horrible stories about things that people have said to our interpreters, and the ones like Janice who continue to work, they really should be commended, because as she said, it is a calling. It is a calling for them, because Janice firmly believes, putting words in her mouth, but I've heard it, that people need to tell their own story. So the interpreters need to tell their own story. I can't tell it. And she tells it wonderfully every day. I'm really honored to be working with her in community affairs with Colonial Williamsburg.
The other last question. We'll double check, so we have to make sure we're not leaving the women Zoom right now.
Back there doing that interpretation. You don't know the bullet you dodged. Talk to you. The National Guard was put on alert. At that time, the National Guard, the police, I should say the security force for the Virginia National Guard were rural white sheriffs. That's who they had on guard, on alert to come down near the Williamsburg. And I was the director security for Washington State. And I can tell you, those dudes were not coming down here with good things on their mind. So whatever God you believe in, thank him.
Oh, did you notice the audience at that?
I was in Washington State. I didn't see, but I know what was going on.
Most of them did not look like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That's really nice.
If you're interested in the work of African American interpretation in Williamsburg, there's a project that I didn't talk about during